notacon.
Before I do anything, I want to read something that I wrote. Somewhere, perhaps in the United Arab Emirates, Iran, and/or Malaysia, there are technical computer specialists working towards mastery of the global information infrastructure. Perhaps instead of a few selected people, teams are being assembled to operate in a distributed, geographically dispersed manner that slowly progress their individual skills, aptitudes, and agendas. Their goals are in their own minds very simple: to bring down high-value targets that represent Western power and so-called Western aggression over Muslims or some other repressed peoples throughout the third world nations. Perhaps this target will be a regional power grid or the stock exchange. Anything that relies on computer network infrastructures for their continued operation and facilitates the economic and military might of Western powers. They have worked very hard to build cyber task forces that share their knowledge, focuses their respective efforts, coordinates the execution of its members' plans. Throughout this progression, each individual in their various cells or groups or organizations are responsible for a whole host of technical skills. Throughout this progression, maintenance of the dissemination of their respective groups' activities, accomplishments, recruitment, and training materials. Excuse me. These individuals are responsible for training the devoted as to how to transport and communicate the group's data and information in a secure manner. Acquire details on high-value targets from both without and within their secured networks. Assemble dossiers for its leadership's review, and devise attacks that will maximize fear and panic in the enemy's citizens in order to undermine so-called free societies. Now, this very well could be fiction. The problem is, it isn't. Is it rampant? No. Have we had a cyber terrorist attack? Some like to argue. I think it was Kevin Mitnick that said or suggested that the power outage that happened on the eastern seaboard was a cyber terrorist attack. Maybe, maybe not. But I can tell you that when you're dealing with a global infrastructure that allows access from anywhere in the world to any other networked component, and you have a competitive global environment, cyber terrorism is coming. Now, I envision, based on that little scenario, that governments are going to mobilize, and they have. Do they have the technical skills to combat cyber terrorism? I think everybody in this room understands the answer is no. They can record them, log them, pursue some of them, but if you're very skilled at this whole hacking aspect, there are lots of ways to elude. Imagine this. You're living in Romania, or maybe the Philippines, and you want to attack the power plant over on 3 Mile Island. Well, you can. You can penetrate their systems, monitor their emails, communications, etc. Attacking doesn't mean you're going to blow it up right now. Attacking also involves intelligence, surveillance, and assembly of information as a potential target. That's what this talk today is going to be about. Now, my style is very, very simple. One, I'm very loud, if you can't tell. I like to use my lungs, okay? I want to keep you guys awake, too. Because, hey, let's face it, caffeine only goes so far. Two, if you have something to bring to the table, please speak up. Stop me. Go, whoa, Andrew, stop. Whoa, whoa. Because I'll just keep going. I get all fired up, and that's it, you know? So please, raise your hand, stop me. You want to bring something to the table. This isn't me expounding wisdom. This is us having a dialogue, okay? This is an awareness creation process, if you will. Now, here's today's agenda for the next hour. I'm going to talk about the definition of cyberterrorism. Now, that sounds like I'm an academic, right? However, the law uses definitions, and that will impact everything this community does with electronics, computers, networks, and so forth. So if you don't talk about the definition, how do you know what it is you're going to create to, as far as laws and initiatives, and keep within the scope of the initiative? I'm going to talk about the use of cyberspace by terrorists. Okay? I'm going to show you some diagrams, some other reports, and so forth. Reported cases. Now, reported cases doesn't mean prosecutions. It means what we have been given in the public domain, the unclassified stuff. Here are some things they have found. Then I want to talk about electronic laws that are going to govern computer crime. Because part of that is also the Patriot Act. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Patriot Act. There's other people who will spend 2-3 hours going through it. But it's currently being redebated for renewal, and what provisions should or shouldn't become permanent. And if you're not part of the conversation, it happens without you. Then I'm going to talk about recent group prosecutions. And there are some pretty silly ones out there, but I'm going to bring those up. Some final thoughts on my part, some conclusions, insights, whatever, and then questions and discussions. Okay, and again, please feel free to stop me and participate. The Center for Strategic and International Studies put out this definition. Cyberterrorism means premeditated, wasn't an accident, politically motivated, all right, which means you're trying to affect something on a political level, by subnational groups or clandestine agents. Maybe they work for other governments. Maybe you have a subgroup, a political party, a terrorist cell, whatever. Or individuals, and this is the part that I kind of disagree with, against information and computer systems, computer programs, and data that result in violence against non-combatant targets. You have information warfare, you have cyber terrorism. Information warfare is against warfare combatants and their systems and infrastructure. Cyber terrorism is the civil side of it. Okay? That's an important distinction because people blur them together. Individuals. That means, by this definition, if you intended to eavesdrop on certain wireless communications going on during this convention, you might be a cyber terrorist. Well, that's pretty harsh. Another definition. Now, this one comes from the FBI during testimony. Deputy Assistant Director of the Cyber Division of the FBI. And he says, a criminal act. So you're a cyber terrorist if you commit a criminal act perpetrated by the use of computers and telecommunication capabilities. Now think about that. How much of our infrastructure, our daily lives, use computers and telecommunications, resulting in violence, destruction, and/or, now this is important, and/or disruption of services. So if you disrupt services, you're a cyber terrorist, where the intended purpose is to create fear by causing confusion. There's a lot of confused people out there. Computer users are confused every day. And uncertainty within a given population with the goal of influencing a government or population to conform to a particular political, social, or ideological agenda. What happened to hacktivism? Social sit-ins, cyber sit-ins. You could spam people and say, look, we need to get rid of this particular government people. And you're asserting, through the use of technology, your political ideology. You're a cyber terrorist. Okay? Now, we don't have any laws yet on cyber terrorism, but it's being worked on. And the opportunity, once one major occurrence happens, you will see, just like the Patriot Act, all of this stuff assembled and put into a law. So keep that in mind. And by the way, I'm not afraid to kind of upset a few people in my government because they're my government. Like I said, you have to be part of the dialogue to complain about it. Now, this is my definition. And I may not be right. It's an emerging domain. Cyber terrorism is a premeditated, it's important that you plan this out. You decided to do this. Politically motivated, criminal act, you have to violate some law by subnational groups or agents against information, computer systems, programs, data. Here's the important part, that result in violence, where the intended purpose is to create fear in non-combatants. Violence, not necessarily you scare someone. Okay? That's an important distinction. I get some emails, and man, I'm terrified to read them. I get emails, and after I've read them, I'm pretty sorry that I spent the time reading them. But you should see, you know, some of the content that we are exposed to, or we expose other people to. So, but this is my definition. Still work in process. Instead of violence, maybe it should be physical violence, such as changing the blood type in your medical database before you have surgery. Now, you're dead on the table. Think about that.
Does that mean the East Coast blackout wasn't violent?
If it was, because they're not saying, they say it wasn't, but I've learned that years later we find out, you know, if it was, it would have had to go through a multitude of systems. It would have had to operate in what they call SCADA systems.
Yeah, but it's not violence.
Well,
Party I've ever seen.
you know, I got to give New York City kudos, because I expected them to go crazy. And they were like, you know, the food's going to spoil. Let's have a block party. Okay?